What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here with JaboctheGreat once again. And we are back with another episode of the Last Word podcast. So, as you can see by the title, we just had the Super Bowl this past Sunday. The Chiefs and the 49ers, a rematch from just 4 years ago. And once again, the 49ers, they had a 10-point lead in this game over the Chiefs. Somehow, Mahomes and the Chiefs, they come back, they win this one in overtime, walk-off touchdown, 25-22. Mahomes, Kelsey, Chiefs, Andy Reid, that whole group, third Super Bowl in just a few years, fourth Super Bowl overall for the Chiefs, and yet another disappointing ending to the season for another great 49ers team.
Yeah, this is a big result here. Obviously, I have been wrong every single week of the playoffs against the Chiefs. I stayed in the fight. I kept going for that pick. Didn't work out. This was a slugfest of a game, not in the way that they scored 48 to 46 points or something like that. But the defense has really fought, and this one, the Chiefs defense really came up big for sure. So, as usual, we'll look at this one on paper, and then we'll get into a little bit of a breakdown, of course. So, Patrick Mahomes goes 34 for 46, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Pretty good day for him. Not a whole lot to be mad at, and especially because he leads the Chiefs on the ground with 66 yards. Patrick is definitely not a bad runner by any means. He's usually able to find a hole and get a few yards every time he runs. 66 yards is not a usual production for him, and that's I'm not mad at it. He did what he needed to do. It was really great for his team, and he's not that far ahead of Isaiah Pacheco, who was second on the team with 59 yards. Between these two guys, the Chiefs' run game was pretty solid. The other two people who recorded some rushing yards didn't really rack up a whole lot, but Pacheco and Mahomes definitely did some good work to get the team moving. There's no scoring on the ground, though, but obviously they didn't need that. And surprise, surprise, Travis Kelce led the Chiefs in the air with 93 yards, but maybe a surprise. He actually did not net a touchdown in this one. Mecole Hardman was second on receiving with 57 yards. He caught a touchdown. It was the game winner in overtime. Big one for him. Justin Watson was third in receiving 54 yards. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling has had some issues throughout the season, throughout the playoffs, here and there with the effort on his catches, but shows up big. He gets 20 yards and hauls in the first touchdown of the game for the Chiefs after a special teams blunder from the 49ers. He just catches a smooth touchdown to get the Chiefs momentum rolling. So a good day for the receiving core for sure. The Chiefs, if you're going to look at the stat sheet and you go, and check on the fumbles, it's a whole lot of mess. Watching the game, it doesn't feel like that bad. They definitely were a little messy, but they only actually lose one fumble, and they were able to recover 2 49ers fumbles. So pretty good as far as that goes. Didn't pick off Brock Purdy, but they did make him uncomfortable all game. Closed off a lot of passing routes. They broke up some big passes. And they're probably the largest part of them getting this ring here in this game in particular. Maybe aside from Harrison Butker, who came out and did what he had to do. 4 for 4 on field goals, got his only extra point attempt. One of those field goals was a 57-yarder. That is the Super Bowl record for longest field goal. He did take it from Jake Moody, who had set it just a few quarters earlier, or a quarter earlier. But Butker, again, came up big last year and nailed the field goal to give the Eagles a win. Comes up big in this one to just nail everything he can to keep them in this game. As for a while, the Chiefs weren't able to find the end zone, and Butker's field goals definitely kept them alive. For the Niners, obviously you lose the Super Bowl, but played a pretty good game. Brock Purdy goes 23 for 38, 255 yards, had 1 touchdown, no picks. He was second on the team in rushing, but that is just with 12 yards. Not a whole lot to be super proud of there for him, but it's not like he's supposed to be a big runner. CMC led the Niners on the ground with 80 yards. He was literally the whole ground game, and they also were not productive from the ground. In the air, though, CMC was also the leader, 80 yards as well. Perfect 80-80 split for an 160-yard day for CMC. And he brought in a touchdown in the air. That touchdown, though, was not thrown by Brock Purdy. It was thrown by one of the other 3 men on this team who really wanted to win the Super Bowl. I would say Brock, CMC, and Juwan Jennings just had a major day. Hit 42 yards in the air and caught a touchdown. And then he threw a 21-yard passing touchdown to CMC. Just had a great game. I do feel bad that he doesn't end up getting a ring out of this one. But after these 3, it didn't really feel like many of the other Niners were there for some parts of this game. Brandon Ayuk does get 49 yards. George Kittle, back with a vengeance. Nothing. That's you would not be able to tell that he was at that game based on watching it. He was actually last on the team in receiving with 4 yards, 3 targets, 2 receptions. So not a great day for him. But Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, CMC, Brock Purdy, they definitely put up a fight. Darrell Luter Jr. Hit the punt with his toe, and Ray McLeod saw it and started to panic, understandably, and tried to get to the ball. Couldn't quite get down on it. The Chiefs recover it. Boom, touchdown to MVS. And next thing you know, the momentum starts to shift slowly, and the Chiefs end up with another Super Bowl ring. Don't really blame Luter too much, but it is can't be in that position. You got to be careful there where the ball is. You could tell that Ray McLeod saw that was happening. He's pointing at the ground, and then he is trying to figure out how to get down onto it. So yeah, Jair Brown picks off Patrick Mahomes, and then talked about Harrison Butker. Jake Moody also had a pretty good game, 3 for 3 on his field goals. He does miss an extra point, but that extra point was blocked, and it ends up being kind of crucial. That blocked extra point would cause the score to be a weird 19-19 that would send them into overtime, where the Chiefs would then win 25-22 after the Niners had some interesting things go on with whether or not they knew the overtime rules.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna dissect this game like a frog in science class. Look, that overtime thing at the end, it didn't really make a difference in this sense, because they keep the field goal. Would have been the rules is the same in overtime, right? As it has been, or I should say in regular season, as it had been, in the playoffs and regular season for the past however many years that we've had this rule now. Because growing up, if you remember, for us to I think it was 2011, 2012 is when they changed the rules first time. Literally, you can go down the field in overtime, get a field goal. Don't have to go that far. If you got a good kicker, I don't know, get to the 30-something, kick a field goal. That's it. Sudden death, literally. That's why they changed it. Then they changed it to what we have in the regular season now. It was for the regular season and the playoffs. Both teams get a chance to get it unless you get a defensive score or a touchdown. I think that's fair. And then changing it for the playoffs, obviously, because of that Bills-Chiefs game a few years ago, they, that everybody's saying hey, whoever got that ball first was going to go down and get a touchdown, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. That's why they changed the rule. But in this sense, again, they kicked the field goal to start. So that wouldn't even have mattered. I guess maybe, the strategy would have been okay if even if we score a touchdown on our first drive, they still get the opportunity, which is new. Then maybe they decide hey, let's just give Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense the ball first to start off, and at least we can come back and know what we have to get. But otherwise, it really didn't make a difference. And then there was the thing with the time at the end. But obviously, the clock was not going to just go hit zero and be oh nope, game over. That was obvious. So with that being said, I'm a little surprised that the Niners came out and openly said that. I don't know if that's a coaching thing. I don't know. It's a little disturbing, to be honest with you. Especially since you've gotten this far into the playoffs, not knowing that is a little disturbing. So if that's a coaching thing, if I hadn't heard Kyle say anything about it, I haven't seen. It's just been the players. So I'm sure they asked him about it when they heard what the players are saying. But that's really disturbing to me that y'all don't know the rules until they say it right before. And this is one of the biggest rules that they've changed in recent years because of that game a few years ago. So that's just inexcusable to me. But let's just go back to the first quarter here and make our way down. First quarter, we were texting throughout the game, as we kind of often do. And let's be honest with you. The Chiefs really had no business being in this game early on. That first drive, McCaffrey, he was pretty much kind of the star of that drive there. He had multiple plays there. Got a couple first downs. Then he fumbled in Chiefs territory there at the 29. So at least probably would have gotten a field goal there. And when they were going, probably would have got a touchdown, to be honest here. So Chiefs get a break there, getting that, and then immediately do nothing. And then the next drive, it's just penalties for the Niners. Penalty here, and then it just pushes them all the way back. And then again, a penalty, a holding. It's now you're at 2nd and 27. McCaffrey is able to do something here. And, even the next play, 3rd down, Debo gets a good bit of yards, but you put yourself in such a big hole, after getting a first down at Ayuk. 2 straight drives. Like, I'm not saying that they would have scored a touchdown on the second one because they were still in their own territory, but 2 straight drives where they probably should have went down and scored something. They get 0 points, and especially when their defense made the Chiefs look pretty pathetic their first 2 drives as well.
Yeah, the first quarter is had me thinking like, whoa, like this. I expected this game. I said it would be in the 30s for the score. I wasn't expecting 50 points from each team or anything. But this is in the first quarter, and it's fumble after some good momentum from the Niners, and then the Niners hold off the Chiefs in two drives, and then all they get out of it for the first quarter is nothing really. I mean that first drive, that drive where they get the field goal extends from the first quarter, and we'll get there. Just here in a second, but it's just there's so much going well for the Niners in this first quarter, and also so much going super poorly. I mean, you hold the Chiefs to a 3-and-out and then a 4-and-out on their first 2 drives of the game. That's pretty good. That's not an easy thing to be able to do. You put the fumble behind you at this point, but then you get the ball again and you go 4-and-out, and then finally you're able to get down. As we get to the second quarter, we get a little bit of life out of these teams. So in the second, obviously it's going to start off with that Niners field goal because they've driven the field all the way down, 10 plays, and there's looking like there's some life in the Super Bowl that the Niners are moving, but then it ends up being a field goal, and it's just kind of thinking like, well, when it's 55 yards, it's at the moment the record for longest field goal in the Super Bowl, and the Niners looked good at some points in this drive, right? They got some big plays here and there, but ultimately you have to settle for a long field goal kind of out of nowhere. I mean, that's how the Chiefs just sort of lock in, and next thing you know, it's you just converted a big 3rd and 9, and then just a few seconds later, you're right back to a 3rd and 14, and then a 4th and 14 as you go for it on that 55-yarder attempt. Just not the most ideal scenario there. And then the Chiefs fumble, and things stay up for the Niners, right? You've settled for a field goal. You really don't want to do that ever against the Chiefs, but now you force them to fumble, and it looks like there's going to be some life, right? The Chiefs had some life in that drive too. They immediately start with a good little rumble from Isaiah Pacheco, and they get down, and then they end up with that fumble. And the Niners, I'm thinking, all right, here's the time to make a statement. We get 2 punts, a 4-and-out and a 3-and-out from both teams. Then finally, the Niners make something happen. They're kind of moving a little slow, and they're just outside the red zone. It looks like, all right, surely we get something here. And then out of nowhere, you get such a showtime play. Juwan Jennings gets a little handoff from Brock Purdy. Throws a trick play to CMC, 21-yard touchdown. And there's a lot of excitement here now. And the Chiefs answer that with just a field goal, and you've got a 10-3 halftime lead that looks pretty solid considering the way this game has gone. 10-3 at this point feels like you've got a pretty considerable lead because the pace has moved at such a weird pace. The issue is going to be that the Chiefs are going to start the second half of the ball, but at this point, you're just thinking, we've held them to only a field goal this whole first half. We're doing pretty exceptional. And so by the end of the second quarter, I'm thinking that maybe the Niners are catching a little bit of rhythm and that they'll be able to carry that into the second half. And then, before we get to the second half, I'll pass it back to you on your thoughts on the second quarter. But this was, where the Super Bowl finally started to wake up. It was the beginning from the first quarter, so it's like we might have a Patriots-Rams scenario, which would have been a little sad.
Look, man, I did think at some point it was going to pick up, but to start now, it was like, man, and I don't have a problem with defensive games, but again, like, it was just frustrating. I'm not a Niners fan. I wouldn't root for the Niners, but it would be frustrating as a Niners fan if you see this team, they're obviously very capable of moving the ball. Their defense has been the MVP that first half, especially that defensive line that people have criticized, over these past how many ever games. Chase Young, Nick Bosa, I mean, all those guys, like they absolutely stepped up. They were able to put pressure on Mahomes and the Chiefs offensive line. It wasn't to the effect of, what happened against the Bucs a few years ago. I mean, that was disgraceful, but Niners defense really showed up and they were capable of moving the ball. So, again, like, they're not going to be out here, even though they went up 10, like, they're not going to be out here beating the Chiefs by 20. Like, that's just not going to happen. A Mahomes team like that Chiefs team like this, that's really going to happen. But like you said, I mean, you at least feel pretty good. You held them to 3. Like, it took the absolute best drive that they had all day, like, up to that point. to be able to get down and just get a field goal at the end of the half like that. So if you're a Niner fan, if you're a Niner player, Niner coach, like whoever, you feel pretty good about that second quarter. You've actually finally gone down, you scored. You Chiefs defense, they had held you, for just a little bit, but for the most part, the Niners were really just holding themselves down, in that first half. Like, to be honest, like it should have been 17-3. It should have been maybe 20-6 or something like that. But the fumble by C-Mac, penalties on that second drive, not being able to really finish on that other drive with Jake Moody, like that was really surprising to me. Not to say I'm surprised he made it. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I was surprised that was the record. Like,
Yeah.
you're telling me there's never been a further kick in Super Bowl history? Like that's pretty interesting. And I know guys are kicking a whole lot longer than they used to, from further distances than they had been. But that was surprising to me. So he made that one. Kudos to him. Like you said, Harrison came back. He got the record himself. And Harrison, he's automatic money. I think he missed like maybe 2 kicks this year. Like,
Yeah, none in the
he's easy.
playoffs.
Yeah, none in the playoffs. I mean, if he gets on that field, if he lines up the kick, he's going to make it. So that's not really an issue there. But even for the Chiefs, again, back to the Niners defense there, like the Chiefs definitely have to be kind of frustrated with how that drive ended, because I feel like they could have scored a touchdown there too. So Niners definitely have to feel pretty good. Again, based off of the way this game is going, like you said, you were expecting high 30s maybe, or low 30s, either or. But the way the game had been going, it just wasn't that type of game. And whether you beat them by 20 or beat them by 3, you win the game. So for the Niners, I think they're happy with how things were going. They might not put up no more than 10 points for the rest of the game, but if they're able to hold Chiefs down, they don't care. Unfortunately, that's what they couldn't do going forward for the rest of the game.
Yeah, the third quarter is going to bring nothing but pain for 49ers fans. The start's pretty good. I'd say you can't start a whole lot better than getting a pick on the third play of the Chiefs drive. Patrick Mahomes, not an easy guy to intercept. He's pretty good at avoiding turnovers either way. He does have that a fumble in the first play actually, but it ends up being okay. And then they throw that pick, and I'm thinking, all right, we actually might be in business here. The Niners might be able to hold on to this one. And then they go 3 and out. And I'm like, well, okay. And we end up following a sequence of 3 and outs. It's just like, all right, back to the first quarter. Chiefs will then get to nail that field goal. It's going to end up being the record-breaking field goal. It's 10-6. You're starting to think, all right, Chiefs are doing a little something here. And then, the Niners go 3 and out. The Chiefs go 3 and out. And I'm like, all right, this is something. Apparently, the odd quarters in this football game are just going to be a little rough. And then we have the unfortunate punt stuff where Luter ends up. He's like pushing the defender out of the way to try to make some room, but he's in the landing zone of where the ball is. It hits his heel, barely noticeable, but somehow Ray McLeod, at least judging by the way he pointed, it's completely in tune with the fact that it just hit his heel. He goes down. When he first goes down to get it, the way he did, I'm thinking, what's his problem? Like, what are you doing? They play the replay, and I see it tip off the heel, and I'm like, whoa, like, how did you catch that? Which I guess that's his whole job at that point, is to keep his eye on the football. And he does. He's just not able to get his hands on it. After it starts to bubble up, the Chiefs realize what's going on. They're able to get onto it, which leads to just one play strike to MVS, and the Chiefs actually take the lead 13-10 before we move into the fourth quarter. And so this third quarter is, again, it's just a lot of, the teams are playing great defense. And I do like to watch defensive football. It's also really good, I think, personally, to see Patrick Mahomes actually struggle with the defense. That's not me being a hater. It's actually just really impressive. He's really good at getting away from pressure, really good at getting the ball out to somebody who's able to get a first down. They might not always score a field goal. They might not always score a touchdown, but 3 and outs are going to be a rarity usually for the Chiefs offense, just because somehow, some way, somebody's going to get open and be able to get the ball down the field. But they actually were able to make him pretty uncomfortable. Get the ball into the ground, or just out of bounds, places like that, or the rushes aren't going anywhere. It was impressive to watch this third quarter and watch these two defenses like really work. And then the special teams blunder happens. I really don't want to blame Luter. It's not like he like soccer kicked the ball. It just tips his heel. He's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And unfortunately for the Niners, that puts the Chiefs in the red zone for that. I want to say the first time this whole game. It might not be. I'm pretty sure it's the first time because they stall out before the half's over, and settle for that 30-yard field goal. But yeah, this third quarter was a defensive battle that all of a sudden out of nowhere just opens up, and the Chiefs get themselves a touchdown, and then the Niners spend the remainder of the third quarter moving towards the field to start what would be a touchdown drive that would be scored at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they had gotten inside, earlier on that drive to end it, but that was the first time, obviously they were able to get into the end zone. But yeah, I'm not gonna act like. I mean, it's a mistake on his part, like for the punt return, right? But I'm not gonna act like he like you said, he didn't soccer kick it or anything. I mean, it's just Luter's just gotta have a little bit more, I guess, situational awareness, because obviously, these guys, they play special teams probably exclusively for most of them, and like you say, Raven McLeod's job is to look out for that football. So he's all the returners. We always see them pointing, like, say, hey, clear out, do this, or get out the way, point, because the guys that are coming to block for him, they're looking for that, but they also got to, of course, turn around to be able to block. So that is kind of the issue there. But whether it was a big mistake, by him or just a blunt, didn't matter because they scored. So there's not really much point in debating it, in that sense. But again, since the Niners were able to go all the way down the field, like it would, like that next drive really got me thinking, okay, the Niners, they're back, because they literally hadn't done anything. And to start that second half, and I got to give credit to the Chiefs defense now, like you said, both defenses, but especially the Chiefs in the second half, because they got put in a pretty bad situation, to start, right? Like they got the ball first, and then Mahomes throws a pick. So now Niners are already at the 44. And it's like, they get a touchdown here. I know it's Mahomes. And whenever I pick the Chiefs, I generally just say, hey, it's Mahomes, it's Reid, it's Kelsey, it's Chris Jones, it's those guys. But they go down 17-3 the way the game has been going. Do you think they're going to win? Like, probably not. So, of course, the penalty on second down, false start, pushed them back. But again, still really good on the Chiefs defense to be able to get them down. Willie Gay, like you mentioned earlier, Brock Purdy wasn't really running this game. He had like one or two, like, Brock Purdy's not going to run that much anyway. But we were talking about it. Hey, he might have a random 20, 30-yard run in this one. That didn't happen. Willie Gay, again, I was mentioning, he's been that guy that's been QB spying, and not having him against the Ravens would have been more of an issue, obviously, if the Ravens actually played any kind of semblance of offense outside of one drive. But got to give props to the Chiefs defense for being able to come out and say, hey, offense, for the most part, it's not getting it done right now. We got to step up. They did. And as you get into the fourth quarter now, this is, you know what? Like, I'm not going to say that the NFL is rigged, but this is the point in the game where it's like, how do you even stop Mahomes and the Chiefs at this point? Like it just felt, once they got that field goal, and I know that's another drive where they wanted to get down. Mahomes gets sacked on a third down, this time 3rd and goal. Like that one to me was a little bit rough, because I'm like, okay, there's enough time for them to get a stop, get the ball back, or even allow a field goal, which they did. But I feel like I wouldn't say I would go for it, but even if they did go for it and didn't get it, like it's still 19-13, assuming the 49ers took a field goal. So not the end of the world. like that would have been a tough decision. Not a decision I would want to make. Because then the next drive, the Niners, they're bleeding the clock. McCaffrey run, like over and over. Like they're just bleeding clock over and over. And thank God for the Chiefs that they finally got to stop. Purdy wasn't bad in this game, but obviously the connection with his receivers, notably Debo, notably George Kittle, notably Brandon Ayuk, especially if you look at social media today. But his connection with those guys for a lot of the game just wasn't there. And we're going to get to overtime in just a second here, but that whether we want to, we don't want to put too much. I don't want to say blame on Purdy. Him missing balls to these guys, that's a big reason why they lost too.
Yeah, it's Purdy definitely plays a good football game in this one, but a lot of the issues start to come up more as the game goes on, and of course you get that touchdown to start the fourth quarter. That's a good, just good drive between them all the way. That's where Purdy gets his first touchdown and only touchdown of the game. Starts with an incomplete pass to Brandon Ayuk, not able to get a whole lot going on there. But then you get Jauan Jennings heated up. You start to get a little bit down the field. McCaffrey gets you some rushes. I would have liked to see, obviously McCaffrey leads the team on the ground and in the air. I would like to see him maybe run a little more outside too, especially they kept just sending him straight into this wall of a defense that the Chiefs have. They've been pretty good at stopping runs throughout this playoffs. I don't think there's been a running back who's given them a whole lot of trouble. I mean, the Ravens didn't try to use theirs. James Cook wasn't the most productive guy. Raheem Mostert didn't get a whole lot going. And McCaffrey obviously gets a lot of yards here, but a lot of times they just send him straight into this big wall. But Jauan Jennings is able to get a little bit of connection. He shows up at an interesting time to get a connection between the two of them. I think Jennings is a good player, but you would expect Debo or Ayuk to be the big ones here. Debo, of course, was dealing with a little bit of an injury, but he came right back in shortly after, so I'm not going to assume that had a big impact on anything. But you do get that touchdown to Jauan Jennings, and that's when Shenault ends up coming up and blocking that extra point, though. And then we get into this weird situation where it's 16-13, and things look really weird. Chiefs are going to get a field goal from that. They look pretty good, just stall out a little bit there, but it's like, and that sack is major because I agree. It's like, all right, do you go for it? And if you miss, it might end up being 19-13. Like, what do we do there? That is, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would not want to make that decision, but they take the 3 points, and they come out of it. They stay 16-16. Maybe the decision is influenced by the fact that the Niners missed that extra point. That opens up a little bit of room, and it helps them a lot that the Niners get downfield. And they were killing the clock. Their goal was definitely to have the game end after that drive. They did not want to see a whole lot more go on, but they end up stalling out. They're going to take a 53-yard field goal. Could not get as far as they wanted to go, I'm sure. Moody doing everything he can aside from the unfortunate missed extra point. And then, of course, the Chiefs will answer with a field goal. And it's like, what do you do? This drive is insane. Patrick Mahomes, 9-yard pass to Kelsey, 3-yard scramble, a 12-yard pass, then you get an 8-yard pass. They're just cutting up everything. You finally get an incomplete pass. So they follow it right up with a 7-yard pass. There's a timeout. They get a little 3-yard scramble from Patrick. Incomplete pass again. And then you just get this massive 22-yard bomb that sets up the field goal, a perfect field goal that they need. Just a 29-yarder. It's essentially an extra point. And that's 19-19. We go into overtime, and the Niners choose to start with the ball, which is interesting. It's not really the worst choice, but it's a bold move. And then they go down, and again, like a lot of the times in this game, they stall out and go for a field goal. Moody will take the field goal. It's a 27-yarder. They're pretty close here. It's 4th and 4. I guess at this point you're going to take the points if you can. But there's some other things that go on here that's just really interesting. And then the Niners defense has been good all game, but they allow just a long, slow, meticulous game drive from the Chiefs where they get down to the field and get downfield, play after play after play after play, and then boom, you get the pass to Mecole Hardman, who was a Jet to start the season. Actually, he caps off the game with 25-22. This one's over with the amount of time left and all the things going on, and it's just interesting. I think Chris Jones said their goal is if they start with if the other team starts and they score a touchdown, then we score and we go for 2. We want to put the game out of reach They said that the Chiefs have talked about the overtime rules every single game in the playoffs. I just really can't wrap my head around the fact that Kyle Shanahan would not have done that at least once throughout all these playoffs. I mean, you've played some tough teams too. You haven't had a single easy game. You got the bye week, of course, sure, but you almost lose to the Packers. You almost lose to the Lions. That's just an interesting path or mindset to take on this pathway to the Super Bowl if they haven't looked at that at all. And they have a decent drive when they're in the overtime. They get 66 yards. They take up 7 minutes. They're trying to have this long drive to score. But at the end of the day, like if they do that, they're still going to score, and the Chiefs will have time to try to work their way downfield. And ultimately, they end up with 3, and the Chiefs are able to get down and take 6. It would be 7, but there's no need to go for the extra points. It's redundant. So, I don't really know exactly what goes on here in overtime, but it kind of is a microcosm of the rest of the game where the Niners are just moving, but not really moving anywhere major. They're not able to get all the way through. And then out of nowhere, the Chiefs finally wake up, move all the way downfield. Best drive they have the whole game, saved for the most clutch moment it could be. It just feels very Chiefs for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to suddenly just wake up and have this big move all the way downfield and make something happen like that.
Yeah, and kind of back to what I said at the end, about the end of the fourth. Like, I just got that feeling. Like we've seen it so many times now. At least it's funny. It's not like Mahomes has been in the league that long. Like we were barely at the end of high school when he got into the league. So like it ain't been that long since he's been in there. But we've seen it so many times in the playoffs, every single year, even in Super Bowls. They just find a way to come back and win. And when this drive started, and the Niners only kicked that field goal after a missed pass on that third down, forced them to kick a field goal. I'm not going to sit here and say Brock Purdy's trash because of that, like because he lost. But that is a difference between Patrick Mahomes and most of the quarterbacks in the NFL. And once the Chiefs got that ball, and once they got that fourth down, that's when I was like, yeah, it's over. They're going to at least go down and get a field goal, because you get a fourth down stop. If you're the Niners, you don't let him run for that first down. It's over. The game is literally over. And they let Patrick Mahomes. They fake it, and he just runs to the right, and then boom, about 10 yards there, fourth down conversion. Like it's got to be crazy frustrating because it felt like almost. I think there's a still picture of like Nick Bosa on that play, like throwing his arms up. Like I think that's how those guys really felt at that point. Like, what's going on here? And that's exactly what happened. They get down, they score that touchdown there. And once again, it's kind of funny because we were talking. I think we talked about this late in the season. Right before the playoffs. Like, if the Chiefs somehow win the Super Bowl this year, that's one of the best performances I've ever seen in my young life, because this team, the receivers especially, completely flipped the switch once they got to the playoffs. I don't know how they did it. I mean, even like Travis Kelce, who's out here assaulting Andy Reid mid-game, I don't know what he got to like chill out. I don't know what. We wouldn't be having this discussion if they had lost, because then they'd definitely be talking about it more. But even Travis Kelce, he didn't have a great game, in the first half. Even like other games, he wasn't great, except exactly when they needed him to be. When he came up, made plays. He didn't get a touchdown like you said, but he made some key plays. That's his security blanket. Mahomes got to Rashee Rice. Whenever there was one play where I think it was at one of those third downs where he could have thrown it to Rashee Rice. It was right before the end of the game, or end of the regulation, I should say. Could have got to Rashee Rice, tried to get to Kelce instead. Didn't get a touchdown there when they could have. They were on the sideline. He came back to Rice. Like MVS, McCole Hardman, guys that have made mistakes throughout the season. Like, he came to them, they stepped up. Like, it's just guys just made plays, and we're not going to get into the debate of we were talking about this earlier. Like, is Mahomes the GOAT? Like, I ain't going to go that far. With that being said, and this is respect to Tom Brady, in my opinion, you can give yours, because I like to actually hear it on this one. I would say this is probably the greatest start for quarterback, of course. That most important position one gets talked about. I think it's the best start to a career in NFL history, solely because they do have the same amount of Super Bowls, yes. But at this point in his career, Tom Brady didn't have MVPs yet. He won the MVPs after he won those first Super Bowls. Mahomes is doing it currently, and he had more All Pros. I wouldn't bring up passing stats because it's relative to the era, and like that's not really I think Brady in his second year led the league in passing touchdowns, but I don't think he even had 30. So you might have had around 30, if that. So not to compare passing stats and eras that were 15, 16 years apart. But to me, being 28 years old, having how many ever All Pros, 2 MVPs, 3 MVPs in the Super Bowl, 3 rings, to me, that's got to be the greatest start. He was already a Hall of Fame, but right now he might be literally no worse than the third best quarterback to ever live. And some people are putting him at 2. Some people are putting him at 1. I wouldn't go that far again. I don't want to be prisoner of the moment, but I can't argue putting him. I can't say he's anything less than 3. You can't do it.
Yeah, that's a fun debate to have. I definitely can't put him at 1. I mean, I think there's so much more to do right now. Maybe not a whole lot more, but I mean, I think in terms of what actually has to be done is it's monumental to have to keep doing that. He's persevered. I think this year's Super Bowl, people can say what they want about it. I've had my criticism of the Chiefs all season. I think this is a very impressive Super Bowl for this team to have randomly turned into some different guys in the playoffs and gone through such tough opponents. I mean, I think the Ravens beat themselves, but I think the Chiefs absolutely were resilient enough to beat the Niners in this one through just their own successful, willing themselves through that. And a lot of that starts at Patrick Mahomes. He's just a really good quarterback. He makes plays happen all the time. He's able to wait for the play to open up to get a little scramble or to, suddenly he's got a dude open for exactly 10 yards and you got a first down and you're moving. The next thing you know, they've scored a touchdown. Yeah, he's 28. He's got the MVP. He's got the Super Bowl MVPs. He's got the Super Bowls themselves. It's hard to say that he's not super high up there. And I do think that 3 or 2 is probably a safe space to put him. I'm not really exactly sure which one of those I put him at. And we talked about this a little bit right before the show. I think Baby Goat is a good place to put him. He's in the line. He's been born. He's getting up there. He's putting in the work to try to become the GOAT. And I think it's possible. I genuinely think that he's got room to move. I mean, we could do the Shannon Sharp and Stephen A thing here and talk about LeBron potentially taking over Jordan. We've never had that debate on this show actually, and this isn't the episode for it. But it's a similar feeling thing, I guess, where you've got this young guy now. Obviously, LeBron is 39. He's not young over there. But you got this guy in the league who's immediately making a pretty big splash. He comes in. He has been to 6 AFC championships. I mean, he hasn't won every single one of them, but that doesn't really matter. He's been to them over and over again. He's made the Super Bowl in most of the ones he's played in, and he's won most of those. Only 2 people to beat Tom Brady, to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs are Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. So I mean, he's been on a pretty solid tear. The Chiefs have been looking like they're moving towards dynasty status for sure. A reporter asked him at the end of the game, is this a dynasty? And he said it's the start of one. It's hard to argue that it's not. I personally, as someone who is not a Patriots fan and is not a Chiefs fan, it is a little painful to be free of one dynasty and watch another one start to blossom. As you can definitely, it pulls in my soul a little bit. I'm like, oh no, not again. We can't go through this for another 20 years. You have to give us at least a break. And maybe it won't be 20 years, but I think right now it looks like Mahomes is here to stay for a while. He's only 28 years old. He's really, really good at football. Fun fact, he just happens to be pretty good at the quarterback position. And I do think that he is definitely in that baby goat conversation. I would probably have him at 3 now. I think one more season like this, even if it doesn't end with a ring, if he just makes it to the Super Bowl again next year, then I think he probably moves to 2. And then we have to see from there. I think he's probably got to pass Brady and then ring him out to actually get over that hump. But he's there. He's up there. He's good. He's really good. It's hard to argue when you look at the quarterbacks of all time. He's not up there. I've seen some lists this year, actually. I saw maybe it was Colin Cowherd's list where it was like top 10 quarterbacks of all time. I don't think it was Cowherd, actually. Somebody. It was like Brady, Mahomes, and a bunch of dudes from like the 80s, 70s. And it was like, all right, I don't know about all that.
Probably
But
Mad Dog.
Mahomes, yeah, it was Mad Dog's list. It checks out for sure. But yeah, I think Mahomes being up there towards the top 3 area is pretty safe to say. And even you could even talk about the tight end quarterback duo. Obviously, Brady has Gronk. Patrick Mahomes has got Kelsey. I don't think that they as a duo are better than Gronk and Brady, but I think they're also on that same trajectory to where they could be. There's something about Gronk that's just a little more dominant than Kelsey. It's a better overall tight end, where Travis is definitely a better like pass catcher guy specifically. But yeah, these two guys, Mahomes specifically, is on his way to the GOAT conversation, and then Patrick and Andy and Kelsey are in a similar trajectory to something like a Belichick Belichick Brady and Gronk. It's very eerily reminiscent. Another AFC team cutting up the league for a little while. It's good to see, of course, just like the Patriots, that every now and then another team is able to squeak through. I'm not the biggest fan of having a back-to-back champion, but it's also cool to see things like this happen just for the sake of like we are witnessing a great thing right now. When I'm 80 years old, if I get there, I'll be telling my kids like you should have seen them. So it's a good thing to know that we're witnessing right now. Obviously, I witnessed Brady mostly as a kid and a little bit into my adult life, same as LeBron. But Mahomes has been mostly all my late teens and early 20s here, and this will definitely stay as like this guy is crazy.
Yeah, man. I guess you don't really. I mean, you think about all the dynasties in sports and just in general. You don't think a dynasty is really going to happen, as it's happening until it doesn't happen. Like out of the three out of what 5 or 6, I can't remember off the top of my head because that first one would have been 20. So yeah, 3 out of 5. So I mean, that's a dynasty, and they happen. I mean, they happen pretty much every decade in every sport, and this one is. It seems like even if they don't win. I mean, again, we talked about the Patriots last week on our picks. Like Patriots, they won 3 when we were like really young, like barely even alive. And then what we grew up on were the Patriots being really good, but they got to multiple Super Bowls, didn't win. And then as we got older, right before Mahomes got in, then when Mahomes was in the league, Patriots win a couple more, 3 more, I should say. So it's just it is interesting, again, like I said this before, it's like, okay, you can win 3, please go away now. I don't want to see these guys every single year. But it is interesting to be able to witness a dynasty in real time like this. I can't do nothing but respect it. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Mad Dog's always gonna be a homer for the old time guys. And there are guys from like, I mean, of course, like Dan Marino, Joe Montana, of course, should be in that. Absolutely should be up there. So that's not a debate. Dan Marino, guys like that, John Elway from the 90s, those kind of guys, they should be up there. But in my opinion, Patrick Mahomes right now, like he can't, assuming he continues this trajectory, he can't be anything lower than, probably won't be any lower than 2 at the end of his career. And it'll just be a matter of, if he passes Brady, maybe not. Brady with 7, that's just such an astronomical number. It's hard to say. So I wouldn't bank on it. But this was, just to finish up, man. I'll let you close it. But this has been a crazy NFL season. Definitely for us as Panther fans. Hopefully, we'll at least be somewhat closer to a Super Bowl. Obviously, I ain't predicting no Super Bowl anytime soon. But hopefully we'll be closer to one next year. I mean, we only had the worst record in the league, so there's nowhere to go but up. You can't get worse than worse. But outside of it, man, it's been a wild NFL season. Definitely hoping next season though. Not to say that the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs they went through a pretty good. I wouldn't say gauntlet, but I mean they went through the Bills pretty good, who had that great run at the end of the season. The MVP, Lamar, and the Ravens, and the Dolphins. So. Not to say they played all starters in the playoffs, so and Brock Purdy and the 49ers. They played the best of the best in the playoffs. They won. But I hope next season, for the sake of the league, for the sake of our entertainment, most of the quarterbacks in the NFL can actually be on the field next year. I think things will be a lot more interesting, as we enter this, I guess, true new era under the Chiefs' reign.
Yeah, to close out our coverage of the NFL for this season, I would say that I as a Panthers fan, I look forward to next season. I'd like to pretend the draft isn't real and just get to business and see what we're doing from there. I know this has been a wild NFL season. This has been a fun one to have covered for sure. I mean, there's so many injuries, which is not great, but it has opened up the floor for a lot of other younger guys to come in and try to make something happen for their teams. But I'm happy to next season to get more of the usual guys back in and see where things are going from there, and hopefully have so a little bit. I wouldn't say more parity. I think there's parity this year. I think the Chiefs went through a tough regular season. They didn't play good football in the regular season. They got an 11-6 record out of it, but their division wasn't super good. And then they hit the playoffs and they played, one of the highest scoring offenses. Then they played the hottest offense of the time. Then they played the actual statistically best team in the NFL, followed by the statistically second best team in the NFL to get the Super Bowl. So I think they fought. There's parity in this one. They overcame, did what they had to do. I mean, that's what sports is about. Of course, people are going to be upset when who looks to be the underdog is the guy who's just got his third Super Bowl in such short time. But I think this was a good NFL season. I've been happy to cover it. This has been fun. We'll obviously be transitioning a little more to the NBA here as we get past the All-Star weekend, which is coming up this weekend actually. But yeah, man, this is a fun NFL season. I hope it's a little more fun for the Panthers specifically next season. I hope to see some guys healthy. It'd be interesting to see what things like Harbaugh can do for Herbert. See what's going to happen with Kirk and things like that. Might have a very different looking league as the Chiefs' reign, as I would say, probably officially started. You can hang up the big villainous banner. Patrick said he wants to be the villain. So yeah, got our main antagonist again. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to be on the minds of a lot of the NFL players and teams as they look to get out here, especially the Niners, who have, I think in the last 7 years, lost either every Super Bowl or NFC championship in those years. That's a weird way to phrase that, but they've been to the championship or the Super Bowl in the past 6 or 7 years, and they have not won. They have no rings to put up for that one, which is an unfortunate thing for them. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fire there. They've been getting consistently better. They were healthy here, aside from Dre Greenlaw going down to something in this game. But yeah, fun NFL season. I look forward to the next one, but I'm also happy to turn away to the NBA for a little bit and see what goes on there.